In this video, I'm going to offer you 5 tips for how to balance comic book collecting with everything else that is going on in your life. Stay tuned. Reggie here, your friendly neighborhood bodybuilder and comic book collector, and I want to welcome you to another one of my videos. As I mentioned in that brief intro, we are going to look at 5 practical tips that you can leverage to find some balance between comic book collecting, which can be all-consuming, and everything else that you have going on in your life. And I want to give a huge shout out to Master Blaster, who gave me the idea for this video. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the channel, I definitely want to encourage you to do so. That way you can stay abreast of all the content that I release from the channel. With that said, let's get to the tips. The first tip that I want to offer is to carve out time. And when I say carve out time, you want to carve out time for the hobby because it's important, but you also need to carve out time for the other things that are going on in your life. And one of the things that I like to do is I typically try to stay out of the comic book room until I've spent a little bit of time with my wife and or with my children. And what I'll do is I will literally take the kids to the park to get them some exercise, to get them some fresh air. And then once they come back home, then they settle down, and that gives me a little bit of time to come to the comic book room. When it comes to my wife, I try to set aside time where I am just talking to her and not doing something with the kids or talking about comics for that matter. So what I try to do is to structure my day as best I can where I'm carving out time for all of the things that are important. And this doesn't have to be, an hour of time or 2 hours of time. Sometimes it is just 15 minutes where I am focused on that specific thing, because sometimes that's all that it really takes to maintain some of that connectivity that the other parts of your life really need. As I kind of alluded to in that first tip, the second tip is to not talk about comics 24/7. And this is very tough for us to do as comic book collectors because we love to talk about comics. And I will tell you, you can literally talk about comics every day, all day with other people that are passionate about comics. You cannot do that for the other parts of your life. Trust me when I tell you, your wife, your husband, your significant other does not potentially care about comics as much as you do. And you might be able to get away with a little bit here and there, but you can't do it all day, every day. So to my earlier point, you may have to carve down some time where you are talking to them about comics, but then you spend the rest of your time talking about something other than comics. And I know that is easier said than done, but trust me when I tell you, if you talk about comics all the time, it will make things sort of tough for you. The third tip that I want to offer is that you have to do something that is important to your significant other. And you don't do this thing just so that you can have time for comics. You do it because that other person or those other people in your life are important to you. And so part of it is that you have to find out what it is that is important to this other person. If they like gardening, go garden. If they like to go for walks, go do that. If they want to travel, try to find some time to take them on a trip and let it be your idea, your suggestion to do this activity or this thing that they enjoy. And when you're doing it, try to actually enjoy it. Believe it or not, people know when you're actually having a good time and you're committed to something, or if you're doing it just for the sake of carving out some time for yourself to do something else, or if you're just biding your time until you can do that other thing. Your significant other and the people that are in your life, they need you. They need quality time with you. And it's really difficult if they have to always ask for it versus it being your idea and you voluntarily doing the things that are important to them and being actively engaged in that thing. it will go a long way towards you having time to do comics. So this next tip might be a little contradictory to some of the other things, but the thing is to offer some of this stuff up and then you have to find out what actually works for you. But the next tip is to try to kill two birds with one stone. And what I mean by that is sometimes you can actually do comic book stuff while simultaneously doing something that is also important for your significant other or for people in your life. For example, my wife at one point really liked to go to these old towns and also to antique districts. And as you know, that is a great place to actually find undervalued comics. And so what I would do is on a Saturday or Sunday, I would suggest that we drive to one of these antique areas or to one of these old towns and spend some time together. And while she was looking at antiques and old stuff, I was looking at toys. I was looking at comics. And then we would go for pizza or coffee and we would sit and just talk about things other than comics. And essentially what I was doing was killing a couple of birds with one stone. We were doing something that was important to her. We were spending quality time together. And I was also kind of sort of doing some comic book stuff as well. If you can find a way to make it work, then it will work incredibly well. The very last tip that I want to offer is to take a break from comics. We have a tendency to overdo things, to go gung-ho, to go all out when it comes to comics, and to do it literally 24/7, where all we're doing is talking about comics, all we're doing is hunting for comics, all we're doing is spending money on comics. Sometimes taking a little break will help for us, and it will also help the people in our lives be able to take a little bit of break and to see us take a little bit of break and to put some space in things. And I'll tell you, I'm honestly on a little bit of a break myself right now. I'm spending a lot less time in the comic book room because I needed to do it. I spend a little less time talking about comics to my wife and spending money on comics because I needed to do it. So don't be afraid to take a break, to recharge, and to allow others around you to recharge as well. So there you have it. Those are my 5 practical tips for finding a way to balance comics with everything else that you have in your life. I want to thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And if you enjoyed it, I certainly want to encourage you to hit the subscribe button and also to hit the thumbs up button and to leave a comment behind. If you need to reach out to me, feel free to do so on Instagram at Regie Collects.